Hello, Shiver Seekers. Are you ready to follow us into the unknown? I'm Cynthia.
And I'm Stephanie. You have found the Dark Oak. Today's story is about Shane Fell, a Louisiana man who, at the age of 36, disappeared without a trace after being involved in a car accident.
Welcome to the Dark Oak, the mystery podcast with purpose. Each month, through our charity, the Branch of Hope Foundation, we give a portion of our proceeds from our Patreon and our sponsorships directly to a nonprofit related to the first episode of the month. To find out more, head over to our Instagram, The Dark Oak Podcast, check out our website, thedarkoak.com, or hang out until the end of this episode. And Stephanie, before we get in to today's episode, which I'm very curious to hear all about, you gave me a little teaser earlier. But before we get into that, I do want to announce a little change we've made with our Patreon tiers. So up until this point, our top tier, which is only $10 a month, our absolute top tier is $10 a month. Up until now, we have been offering a monthly live from our Patreon only Facebook page where those top tier members can hop on once a month and watch Stephanie and I talk to you live and chat back and forth. However, we understand that listeners, you are busy and it is sometimes really hard to be able to log on at a certain time every month and sit down. You've got dinner, you've got kids, you've got work, you've got all these things going on. So we decided to offer to our top tier Patreon members a personalized cameo style video from Stephanie and myself. So anybody who upgrades to the $10 tier or anybody who joins our Patreon at the $10 tier, Stephanie and I are going to send you a personalized cameo style video where we just talk directly to you or whoever it is you would like for us to speak to. We thought that would be a fun way to thank our top tier Patreon members. And if you have not checked out our Patreon tiers, we have a $2 tier, a $5 tier, and a $10 tier. But it's that $10 tier that will get you this personalized cameo, which I personally would love. I would love a cameo from some of my favorite podcast hosts. So we wanted to offer that to you. So check us out over there at the Patreon at the Dark Oak.
Yeah, and now's a really great time to do it, too, because we are still celebrating that 100th episode that came out just a few weeks ago. So in April and May, we're releasing double episodes, 2 episodes every week. And we really hope that gives you a better chance to get to know us a little bit more, get to know our style, get to know the kind of cases that we cover. And we want to be your people. We want to be your little community.
That's right.
Well, as you alluded to, Cynthia, I did give you some teasers on this case because I find it so weird. Like, there's no logical explanation for Shane's disappearance. And in many ways, this reminds me of, say, a Maura Murray case or a Brandon Swanson case, where there's a car accident, not a major one, technically minor car accident. The driver seems unharmed. But by the time either friends, family, law enforcement, EMT arrive at the scene, the driver has disappeared. And it seems very strange to me as I was researching this case. This is like a theme that keeps coming up. There are quite a few of these, and some I haven't even mentioned, that I wound up finding as I was researching this case that I'm going to cover in a later date. But I don't know, it's a little haunting. And you suggested some theories. Actually, what was the story you were just telling me?
So I thought this could be, without knowing any of the details of this particular case, I thought there's a couple things that just popped to my head. First, maybe that the driver suffered some kind of head injury and just got confused and wandered off. But the second theory is that sometimes being in an accident leaves you very vulnerable. And I was telling you how I was driving home late one night on a little 2-lane curvy lakeside road, and my tire blew. It was like 1 o'clock in the morning. And literally half of my car is practically in the lake because the road is that narrow, that close to the lake. And I'm trying to pull off the road. The other half of my car is literally still in the road. It's pitch black. And I felt so vulnerable. I just thought anybody could come along, and I'm a sitting duck. I really felt like I was a sitting duck. There was nowhere for me to go. I couldn't even get out for fear of alligators or, you know,
Hashtag Florida problems.
That's right. I mean, my car, my tires literally in the muck. And then, I was half in the road. So I was worried somebody who'd been out drinking wasn't going to see me and hit me, or just a bad guy. If a bad guy just came and stopped and saw this woman alone, in the dark by herself, I felt very, very scared. I felt very vulnerable. So having had that happen to me recently, I thought, I wonder if these drivers could be finding themselves in similar situations where maybe just the wrong person drives by at the wrong time.
Well, I think all of those could be theories. I'll tell you what I know in this case, but when I tell you there are really no leads, there are really no leads. I was fortunate to be able to grab some intimate details of this case from a podcast called Unfound. The host of Unfound, Ed Densel, interviewed Terry Fell, Shane's mother, about 6 years after her son's disappearance. And she was able to fill in lots of the gaps in reporting. So basically a lot of gaps in Shane's story. Because as we know, reporting isn't always very clear. They will jump in timelines sometimes. So
Right.
You're like, wait a minute, what happened between this time and this time? Now, of course, we still don't know. There are still a lot of question marks here. But that interview for me was so telling because even though this interview took place 6 years after Shane's disappearance, Terry always spoke of Shane in the present tense. As in, he loves art. He is very close with his brother. We both use a certain kind of phone. And just to hear her mother's heart made me feel like I got to know Shane a little bit more.
Yes.
So if you are interested in getting a few of these details in her voice, again, I will share them here, but if you want to hear them in her voice and the way she speaks about Shane, I highly recommend you try the Unfound podcast. It just clearly communicates the closeness that this family had and how much Shane is missed. And I'll make sure to link that episode in the show notes as well. So let's get into Shane and his family. As I mentioned, Shane was a 36-year-old man living in Louisiana at the time of his disappearance. He grew up in a close-knit family, and he was particularly close with his little brother, Brett. He was soft-spoken, and even as a child, could quietly occupy himself for hours. As a matter of fact, as an adult, he loved origami, which I think is so cool.
That's very cool. Yeah.
Origami is such a beautiful art form, like the precision, the clean lines, loads of creativity. His mother said he was particularly interested in making the birds, those origami birds.
Like the cranes.
Yes, yes. He was also into painting and jewelry making. And he was also a whiz at computers. And even more incredibly, he was totally self-taught.
So just hearing you describe him, he reminds me a lot of my oldest son.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Okay.
like just the personality. My son doesn't do like the jewelry making and painting, but a lot of the others to sit quietly and play for hours and be a self-taught computer whiz and just be thoughtful and creative. Yeah, I'm like, oh, you're talking about my son. So I can see how much Terry must have just loved him.
Yeah,
He just
absolutely.
sounds like a really cool guy.
Yeah, overall, I just got the vibe that he was really creative, talented, and really just a well-rounded guy.
Yeah.
In September of 2010, Shane moved back to Marrero, Louisiana to be closer to his family. He had previously lived and worked in Savannah, Georgia, but from what I can tell, he was in a relationship that had fallen apart, and he was just eager to be back in his own stopping grounds and to be with his people, if you will. And luckily, his job working as a senior technical advisor at Verifone made it very easy for him to move Because of his strong talent for English, he was hired to write manuals years earlier. But apparently Verifone was before its time because even in 2010, it already had a remote worker program, which,
Nice.
as we know, yeah, exactly, blew up in 2020. But this was like a decade earlier. So Shane was able to move back to Louisiana, and like he was posted as like a transient worker, but all of his work could be done from home on a daily basis.
So nice. I think everybody should work from home. I just don't understand why
Same,
most
girl.
places can't work from home.
Same,
Yeah.
same. So it's really cool that Shane was able to say, you know what? I just need to be back where I'm more comfortable, but he was still able to keep this job. And clearly they really valued him in order to say, yeah, we would love for you to be able to do that.
Right. Well, to be able to write manuals, I'm like, oh wow, like that's you got to be a smart person to
Yeah,
to do that.
because it's the English part, but you also have to have technical knowledge in order to write
Right.
the manual. Right.
And be a natural teacher because some people can explain to you how to do something and you just look at them cross-eyed. Like to be able to deliver information in a way that people can understand what you're saying, that is a gift that does not come naturally to everybody.
I absolutely agree. Absolutely agree. Now, the living situation also totally worked out because Shane's brother Brett had just purchased a little house that he was planning to rent out.
Cute.
Yeah, so when he heard Shane was moving back and needed a place to live, Brett was more than happy to rent the house to his brother. So Shane moved back and stayed temporarily with Brett and Brett's wife, Amber, at Brett's house until the rental house could be fixed up, and then Shane moved into the new house.
Nice.
Now, this was an awesome situation. The family loved being back together. They even started a family night where they would all meet at one person's house and that person would cook dinner. I know you're making a face. Isn't that precious?
I love this family. I
I
love this
know.
family.
I know. And Terry in this interview reported that Shane had recently completed his night. And Terry said he was so happy to be able to cook and entertain his family and his new place.
Oh,
And I'm just picturing this like bachelor guy entertaining his family. It's so precious.
yeah. That's awesome.
So we're going to fast forward 9 months to June of 2011. Shane was settling into an easy way of life. He had good friends and even went on a few dates here and there. He wasn't a big nightlife person, but one thing he did love to do regularly was to hang out at the Rum Runner Daiquiri Bar to watch his brother Brett play in a weekly pool tournament on Thursday nights. Now, this weekly pool get together wound up being like a little community. You know, when you see the same faces every
Yeah.
week. As a matter of fact, Brett's brother in law, Josh, also played in the pool club. So it was like a bit of a family affair. And apparently it was a big deal too. This wasn't just a local tournament. Like it was set up, whatever team won at the end of the season would be sent to Biloxi to compete in a state competition. And then from there, they would be sent to Vegas for a national competition. So while this was fun for the guys, this was also something they took really seriously.
Sure. Yeah. Some real incentive to do well.
Absolutely. Now, according to Brett, the evening of Thursday, June 10th, 2011, was just a regular night. Nothing happened out of the ordinary at the bar. Brett and Josh were playing pool for their team, and Shane showed up like he normally did. And he showed up with a little dinner from a fast food place, and he ate his dinner, and then he shared a few pitchers of beer with the guys. Now, obviously, because this case involves a car accident, the subject of alcohol consumption is a big question mark.
That popped into my head. Okay. Have we been drinking?
Brett confirmed that everyone was drinking beer. Like the team was sharing pitchers, like everyone was taking turns ordering pitchers. But remember, these guys were there to play pool. So their goal was to win the pool tournament, not getting sloshed, if that makes sense. Now, while Shane wasn't playing, he reportedly consumed beer at the same rate as the other men who were. So no one remembers Shane being heavily intoxicated, but he was sharing a few drinks. So drinks were definitely on board, but nobody remembers him stumbling or slurring. And again, this is a weekly thing on a Thursday night. So my interpretation is this was just kind of social consumption of beer. But there is no doubt he did have drinks on board.
Okay. But as you're suggesting, just because a person has drinks doesn't mean they're intoxicated.
And I just want to put this out there. I have no idea if drinks played a role in Shane's accident, but just for the record, buzz driving is the same thing as drunk driving. So I don't condone any amount of drunk driving. So if it does sound like I'm somehow saying, well, he wasn't really drunk, if he was at all intoxicated, he should not have been driving.
Sure.
I just want to say that for the record.
Sure.
So even though I'm saying, well, it was only a little bit of beer, I'm not saying having a little bit of beer and driving is okay. I'm just saying I don't know if it contributed to his accident. I just want to make that clear.
Sure. And some people can have beers and it not bother them at all. So we just don't know where he fell into that category.
Right. The tournament started around 7 p.m. and lasted about 5 hours. So the three men wound up leaving the bar around midnight. All three men had separate cars. Brett lived in a little area called Terrytown, which is about 20 minutes away from the bar, and Shane lived in Marrero, the opposite direction, about 10 minutes away. Josh, Brett's brother-in-law, was planning on staying the night at Brett's house, so Brett and Josh headed out together toward Terrytown to the west, and Shane went on his way to the east. Now, Shane and Brett had this ritual where they would text each other on late nights to confirm both of them made it home safely.
Oh my gosh, I am in love with this family.
These adult men.
It sounds like my family, but I kind of thought we were just strangely close. So I love that there's another family out there who is just so wonderful.
Yeah, genuinely.
Yes.
On this particular night, though, Brett noticed that Shane didn't text him when he would have expected to receive a text.
Mm-hmm.
Remember, Shane's house is only 10 minutes away, but Brett's was further. So normally, Brett would get that text before he got home. So Brett called Shane. Shane answered the phone and told Brett that he had been in an accident and rolled his car onto its side.
Oh, that's a big accident.
Yes and no. It absolutely is an accident. There's no getting around that. But Brett said Shane reported he was unharmed, but he did sound a bit shaken up, like full of adrenaline. So let me explain the accident a little bit more. Shane was driving down a road called River Road, which runs along the Mississippi River. And this road hosts a ton of commercial buildings, like industrial buildings and things. And there's also a huge pipe yard that runs along the road. Because of this pipe yard, groups of massive pipes run along the road in several places, even crossing over the road, running from the river to the warehouses and storage facilities.
Mm-hmm.
If you Google River Road and the cross street is Marrero, if you Google that, you can actually see what I'm talking about. These big pipes come over. It almost looks like a bridge going over the road, but it's just pipes.
Okay. River Road, Marrero.
Now, this particular road, River Road, can be a bit dangerous because it has a few sharp corners, right? It's following the river. And the pipes can make it worse, especially at night, because they don't necessarily follow the road exactly. Which means if you aren't familiar with the area or on your game, it's very easy to miss a turn because you're following the pipes.
Sure. Yeah, that would be like an optical illusion.
Absolutely, like an optical illusion. And this is what his family thinks happened that night. On one particular bend in the road, it would appear that Shane incorrectly stayed straight. And then when he went to correct the car, the tire caught the lip of the ditch and the car rolled over onto its driver's side.
Ooh, okay. That's intense.
It is intense. The car did not roll completely over, but it kind of went into the ditch and then rolled over on its side. So there was no big collision, if you will, but still, I can absolutely see how this would shake somebody up.
Oh, if my car lands on its side, sure, yeah, I'm shaken up, yeah. He's sitting sideways with his door on the ground.
Exactly, in this kind of muddy ditch.
No, that would be really terrifying.
So if you picture it, the car, a small Saturn, is now on its driver's side with its passenger side up. Now, unable to open either door, Shane crawled through the passenger side window to get out of the car. Now,
Okay.
this is almost the exact moment that Brett called Shane. Shane was just exiting the car. So Shane tells him what happened. He also confirms to Brett that he is fine and that there were no other cars involved in the accident. Brett said, quote, he didn't act scared. He knew he was on River Road. He seemed very coherent at the time, end quote. Now, Brett is almost home when he hears this news. So he decides, based on what Shane is telling him, again, I'm fine, but I've been in a wreck, that Brett is going to go home, grab his wife, Amber, and then head over to help Shane. Now, right before Brett got home, Shane called again, asking how quickly Brett would be heading over, and Brett confirmed they would be there as quickly as possible. So it was like a very quick check-in call. Really nothing additional was discussed on that call. About 20 minutes later, as Brett and Amber turned onto River Road to meet Shane, Brett tried calling Shane to find out his exact location on River Road, but Shane didn't answer. But as Brett continued down the road, he began to hear sirens and see lights, so he knew he must be getting close. And sure enough, he was. At the scene of the accident, he found that police cars and a couple of EMT vehicles had just arrived before he did. But the reception he got from police at the scene was the opposite of what he expected. After identifying himself, officers at the scene started asking Brett where his brother was. Brett said they were saying things like Shane may have hit his head and have a concussion or may be disoriented and he needed medical care. And Brett was obviously confused at this point. Like, what are you talking about? Where is my brother? Isn't he here? As it turned out, a security guard for the pipe yard who was driving along River Road surveying the lots had come upon Shane's overturned car. According to the security guard, when he approached the car, he claimed to see no driver, but strangely, the windshield wipers were on. He then went on to call the emergency services to report the accident. So, Shane's gone.
And he's like right up against the river, right?
Not necessarily. The way it was described is maybe about 20 yards from the river.
Okay.
So, there's a levee and then like an embankment between he and the river.
Okay, this is interesting. I mean, I will say that from what you're telling me now, I feel like there is a possibility that he could have suffered from a concussion or something. That's a pretty big jolt to have your car flip onto its side on the side you're sitting. He could have hit his head on the window or any number of places. And then the fact that he seemed coherent and fine to me doesn't necessarily mean anything. I mean, he could be in shock. I don't know. This is weird.
It is. Now, around 1:30, about an hour after the accident, officers sent out helicopters with temperature-seeking infrared cameras in an attempt to find Shane. Now, while this is positive for Shane, I think it's safe to say at this point, law enforcement considered Shane a criminal, like DUI type stuff, as in he fled the scene of his accident because he was drunk driving.
Sure.
But regardless of the police motive, no trace of Shane was found.
Now that's interesting. There's nothing around except for a river on one side and then these industrial type buildings, right? There's nothing around for a while.
Right.
But at the same time, it was an hour after the accident. You can go pretty far on foot. So if he'd just gotten out of the car and just started walking, he could have made it pretty far.
Sure.
I'm going to be interested to know if we've looked in the river.
There have been. Let me get to it. Now, Brett and Amber also stayed at the scene. As soon as they found out Shane was missing,
sure,
they said, oh my gosh, no, we're going to go look for him. So they started looking for him on foot, literally looking in bushes and things like that.
Yeah.
But they also came up empty-handed. Around 5 a.m., Amber and Brett knew they needed more help. So they called the rest of their family and Shane's friends to see first if anyone had heard from Shane, and secondly, to see if those people could help in the search for Shane. Attention turned to the car for clues as to where Shane might have gone. Police initially noticed that despite what looked like an airbag triggering event, the airbag was not deployed. It was later explained that Shane purchased the 10-year-old Saturn he was driving as a used car. At some point before he purchased the car, the airbag had deployed, but Shane had never replaced it because he assumed it was an added expense that he would never need. So, ugh. While there was no forensic signs that Shane hit his head, we just don't know for sure. There was nothing on the windshield. There was nothing on the steering wheel. There was nothing to indicate he had hit his head on anything.
Yeah, but I would almost think it would take a pretty great amount of force to flip a car on its side. And knock on wood, I've been in some pretty scary accidents. And again, knock on wood, my car has never flipped on its side. So for that amount of force, I think we can just assume he's hit his head on something.
I don't know if I would describe this as force. Having seen pictures of the ditch, it's a pretty steep ditch, meaning I don't know if it's force that flipped the car as much as just the angle of the ditch.
You're being turned on your side.
No doubt it was a collision. No
Yeah.
doubt. We'll go into later. He wasn't even going that fast. So I don't know if it's force as much as just the angle.
Okay. All right. Well, then that does change things. But I still think it's conceivable he
I still think it's
head.
Absolutely. There was a small amount of blood found on the driver's side door, but it did not seem consistent with a head wound. From analyzing the hair mixed in with the blood, detectives determined it was more likely connected to his arm. I think it was like arm hair in there, which makes sense, right? If you like slam against the door when the car comes to a stop. But again, it didn't appear like a situation where his arm was broken, but just like kind of scraped.
Sure.
And again, Shane never mentioned anything to his brother about his arm being injured. He never mentioned any injuries. If this was a head injury, I don't know that you would have thought to mention it if, like you said, you're in shock or you have a concussion or some kind of brain injury. I don't know if you would have even thought to mention it on the phone. But Brett, who clearly knows his brother very well, did not suspect anything was wrong.
Okay. I mean, I would argue that, at least for me, in my experience, the real pain from a car accident doesn't even hit immediately. You know, like whiplash, things of that nature don't even show up for at least 24 hours or so. So, but I do think the fact that his brother, who knows him well, is speaking to him and saying there was nothing out of the ordinary. Well, he was, at least in those moments, acting normally.
Yeah, Brett did say he was shaken up, like adrenaline, like,
Sure.
Oh my gosh. I think Terry actually quoted Shane through Brett, because I'm sure they've talked about this over and over and over as a family since Shane's disappearance. But apparently he said, bruh, I rolled my car. Like, I mean, which sounds like a way a brother would speak to a brother, right? Like, bruh,
Yeah.
I rolled my car. So even the way he's speaking is very characteristic of the way Shane would speak.
Okay. But he's missing.
But he's missing. Now, there was also the strange issue of Shane's seatbelt. According to Shane's mother, Terry, Shane was a devoted seatbelt wearer. She said, quote, I've watched him leave my front door and he always put on his seatbelt. He was an avid believer in people wearing their seatbelts, end quote. However, police reported that when they looked in the car, the seatbelt was clipped together as if Shane was sitting on it. But that seems very strange. Like, why would it even be clipped then?
To me, that points to him maybe crawling out of it. So
okay,
it would make sense that you would unclip your seatbelt. But again, he is at a weird angle and he would almost be laying on one side of the seatbelt.
Yeah, and maybe he couldn't reach the buckle because it's like under him.
Yeah.
Is that kind of what you're thinking?
Either
okay.
that
well,
or
no, because it would be on the other side.
But
yeah.
he's laying on the seatbelt or it's tangled or he's having a hard time finding the buckle because he's at a weird, awkward position and like crawls out. Or again, even a head injury where he's not thinking as clearly. But to me, the seatbelt being clipped together almost points to the fact that he would have been wearing it.
I think so too. I don't see the idea of him clipping it to sit on top of it when he left the bar.
No.
I would think he just wouldn't put it on if he wasn't planning on wearing it. Like it wouldn't be clipped at all.
Right. Unless he was severely intoxicated. Then you might clip it and sit on it just because you're doing stuff that makes no sense. but it doesn't sound like that was the case at all. We have no reason to believe that's the case.
Yeah, I don't think that one fits. You know those cars where they ding at you constantly until you put your seatbelt on?
Yeah.
But then if you're going to go to the effort of like clipping it, why wouldn't you just put it on? So, I
Well,
don't know.
especially since he was known to be a seatbelt wearer. If he was someone who didn't wear seatbelts, people would know that,
Right.
you
I think
know.
so too. I think so too.
Yeah, I think he was wearing a seatbelt, and just for whatever bizarre reason. But here's the thing we have to remember, this is a bizarre situation to find yourself in. Laying on your car door with your car flipped, alone in the middle of the night in a ditch. That's a bizarre situation, so you're going to see bizarre things.
Yeah, sure. Now, the accident itself, even though the car was turned on its side, and like you said, like a collision, it is clear that Shane was not going at a high rate of speed. Even though the car was not drivable after the accident, it was not completely totaled. And this particular turn on the road is notorious for accidents, and cars that are going too quickly have even been known to been thrown completely from the road. So, based on where his car was, we know that he was not going quickly. And according to Shane's mother, this tracks with the way Shane would have been driving on this particular road. Again, it was a back road he wasn't all that familiar with. It was dimly lit and not well traveled. So he wouldn't have been like hair on fire going down the road. And if he had, when he hit this particular curve, we would have seen more damage to the car.
Okay.
However, this brings us to the question of why Shane was on this road at all.
Okay, so I was wondering that. I was thinking if he's not familiar with the road, it means this isn't the road he took home every week.
Right. See, this road was not a direct route to his house. As a matter of fact, it was out of the way. Now, I'm not going to go into all the geographic specifics, but just know based on a map, while River Road would eventually get Shane home, it was not at all the most efficient route. The best his family can surmise is that the better route to his home, the one that he was familiar with, the one that was more well lit and well traveled, was also known for having DUI checkpoints.
Well, that leads to the idea that maybe he was a little more intoxicated than we were led to believe.
Maybe. His family stressed again that Shane was not acting intoxicated when he left the bar, but that's not to say he necessarily would have passed a checkpoint. Remember, some people can, for whatever reason, operate a motor vehicle intoxicated, not condoning it. It is not okay. But heck, maybe he wasn't intoxicated. Maybe he was just worried that maybe he smelled like beer and he didn't want the hassle.
I mean, I guess it's hard to say. I would think that if I knew beyond a shadow of a doubt I was okay to drive, I wouldn't be afraid of a checkpoint.
We don't really know Shane's reasoning. That's the only thing people have been able to come up with. Maybe because of the sensitivity of it, his family isn't directly saying, like, oh, yeah, for sure, he always took this back road because of the DUI checkpoints. But again, we don't know for sure. But his family is again saying he was not heavily intoxicated.
I will say this, there's literally only been one time ever I've been involved in a checkpoint. And it was right on a very major road that you're going anywhere, around our town, you're going on this road. And I hadn't drank anything at all, but they were literally stopping every car.
Yep.
And it was kind of a bummer. I wouldn't complain. I'm glad we're making sure people are driving safely. But here it's the middle of the night. I'm tired. I'm just ready to get home. I don't even remember where I was coming from, but I was doing something completely innocuous. But to have to stop and hand everything over to a police officer and explain what I'm doing and where I'm going and all of this. So now that I think about it, if I knew I could avoid that by going on a back road, I might, regardless of whether or not I have been drinking or am intoxicated.
Well, this is what Shane's mother, Terry, said. She said, heck, I don't drink and I don't go down that road at that time of night because of the hassle of it.
Right.
It's always a backup. It's always this rigmarole. And she said, so I can see him even if he would have passed the checkpoint, just wanting to avoid the checkpoint.
Yeah. So I retract my previous statement that if you're not drinking, you have nothing to hide, because I do think that perhaps I may have done the same thing to avoid the hassle.
So we're not sure. Did he avoid it because, again, like you said, he didn't want the hassle, or did he avoid it because he thought he may not pass? I don't know if that's the real reason he took an alternate route. I just know what his family is saying.
And I will also say sometimes I take alternate routes because I'm bored, or for many different reasons, because the left turn light was red when I passed my usual left turn, so I just went straight to go to the next one. I don't know that I normally do that in the middle of the night when my focus is just getting home.
And this route wasn't just kind of an alternate route. I mean, it technically was, but it was out of the way.
Okay. And not like especially pretty, and even if it was, it's the middle of the night, so we couldn't see. So
Exactly.
okay.
All right, so let's go back to the morning of his disappearance. So Brett and Amber have now called in reinforcements. After Shane's family was alerted to his disappearance, they decided to set up a bit of a command station at Shane's house. And remember, they had a key because Brett owns the house. Now, while the family was gathering, trying to formulate a plan, the authorities knocked on the door. While the Fells were first relieved to know the police were looking for Shane, they soon gathered a sinking feeling when they realized instead of having comrades in their search, they were instead being accused of harboring a fugitive. The family, particularly Brett, was accused of hiding Shane.
Oh my gosh. I can imagine the frustration here. I'm worried sick about my brother.
Yep.
They're accusing me of hiding him.
Yeah. He was all but threatened to turn Shane over to the authorities because they thought he was trying to avoid some kind of like DUI charge.
And here's the thing, all this for a DUI charge that at this point probably they wouldn't even be able to prove because it's several hours later. So the blood alcohol level would have probably lowered, to within normal limits. Did he have previous DUI charges where like this is the one that would have landed him in prison, or?
Nope. Brett and Shane had completely clean records.
This
No record at all.
Weird.
Isn't that weird?
It's a weird response.
And especially because there was no other vehicle involved in the accident. It's not like somebody else was injured and so, he's being charged for that. So what if he was drunk driving? It's his own car that's now in a ditch. It just seems a little strange.
All the focus on we have to find this fugitive. He didn't even destroy any other property, I'm assuming.
Nope.
Just literally his car.
Yep. Now, knowing what you know of this family, this must have been devastating. I mean, they have no idea where Shane is. And now after this, they know police are looking for him, but not in the way that they should be looking for him.
Well, and are they looking for him, or are they just accusing Brett of harboring him? Are they actually out looking for him?
The answer would be no.
Yeah, that's how I would feel. I'd be like, you're not even looking for him. You're at my door accusing me instead of being out looking for my brother.
Exactly. So what they read from this is they were kind of on their own. So for the next 3 days, they set up search parties. This family set up search parties for Shane, and I will tell you they were absolutely relentless. But unfortunately, all that was discovered of Shane was a single wet and muddy shoe found in the ditch close to his car where the car came to a rest. Amber, Shane's sister-in-law, said, quote, "I've been in ditches, I've been in the mud, we've been on the trails, the railroad tracks, and abandoned warehouses," end quote.
His shoe is interesting because...
A single shoe.
Yeah, that's interesting because would you get up and walk away missing a shoe if you were altogether mentally well? Is that something you would do willingly?
Excellent point. Would you catch a ride? Would you go for a walk? Would you do anything if you were in your right mind with one shoe? I would think if anything, if you couldn't find that shoe, because again, it was kind of in like the muddy ditch and it's dark, you would at least take off your other shoe, I would think. I think walking with one shoe would be even weirder.
Yeah, it would be. Well, and he knows his brother's on the way. So why is he walking anywhere?
Fair enough.
His brother's on the way, and he has a cell phone. So he actually could have called 911.
Right. Now, the family theorizes that the shoe came off when Shane exited the car. Because remember, to get out, he would have had to, like, jump out the window. And they think when he went down into the ditch, like, the shoe just got stuck in the mud.
Sure.
So that's how it came off. But again, the question of why is there only one shoe in the ditch and no Shane anywhere? It's still very odd.
It is odd. Now, I know that I have like a strange phobia of alligators, but there are a lot of alligators in Louisiana. And if he's landing like in muddy, murky muck right beside a river, there is a possibility for alligator activity there.
That has never been proposed. I mean, it was mucky and muddy, but it wasn't swampy. Is it possible? Sure. But no blood was found. None of his other belongings were found. Just a single shoe.
Okay.
Now, in the days that followed, Shane's family organized river searches along the banks of the Mississippi, and relatives even conducted several flyovers, but there was no sign of Shane. On Friday, June 17th, a week after Shane's disappearance, Shane's friends and family held a candlelight vigil at the accident site to raise awareness about Shane's disappearance and to pray for his safe return. Brett, who had taken a leave of absence from his job so he could concentrate on searching for Shane, told reporters, quote, "I would give everything I have to find my brother. Without him, my life isn't the same and it will never be the same," end quote.
My gosh, it's just so devastating. This sweet family. And I've Googled a picture of Shane here. He's very handsome. And you can just tell, like, he's a likable guy.
Yeah, just an easygoing, cool character.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
Now, after seeing the family's urgent search for Shane, the Jefferson Parish Sheriff's Office also decided to provide assistance.
I hope it's real assistance as opposed to focusing on harboring fugitives.
Yes, it was. At this point, they realized, okay, they actually don't know where Shane is.
Oh, okay. Well, good.
So,
At least they pieced that together.
yeah, took them a few minutes. They offered dog searches, but
Oh, okay.
unfortunately, this also would lead to a dead end. Dog handlers blamed a fresh cut of the grass upon the levee, recent rains, and the multitudes of searchers in the area for diminished ability of the dogs to find Shane's scent. So it's like, if you guys had done that earlier, maybe you would have found something. But at this point, it's too little too late. Jefferson Parish Sergeant Larry Diaz told reporters that investigators didn't believe Shane's disappearance was due to foul play. Detectives believed he had voluntarily walked away and would show up when he was ready. Which, again, to me, it's like, okay, you're searching for him, but are you really searching for him?
Right, because, he walked away and will show up when he's ready. What would lead you to believe that? Like, what's going on in his life? What have you found in his personal life that would lead you to believe he's just going to get up and walk away by choice?
I'm not saying he didn't get up and walk away, but I think if he did, I think something is wrong.
Right, walk away and not come back? Yeah, no.
Zero chance. Knowing what you know of this family, there is zero chance in my mind he just walked away to start a new life. Zero chance.
So to me right now, I feel like we have three options as to what may have happened. I feel like he went in the river for whatever reason and never made it out of the river. I feel like he walked away and succumbed, but I don't understand why we wouldn't have found him. Or was somebody else driving on this road, picked him up?
Well, police decided to follow your third theory. Maybe somebody else picked him up. So they decided to seek out eyewitnesses that may have seen Shane the night of the accident. And they already knew this would be difficult because this is a dark road and it's not super well traveled. There aren't a lot of cars on this road. So they first re-interviewed the security guard who originally called in the accident, but unfortunately he didn't have much more to add. But something he said right from the start has been a very debated detail. Remember, he said he saw the windshield wipers on. Well, he has stood by that, but that seems impossible because the keys to Shane's car have never been found. So how could the electronics have still been working?
Oh, for some reason, I was thinking the car was found with the windshield wipers on. But no, that was just his eyewitness account, was that the windshield wipers were on.
He said the windshield wipers were on. When the police got there, they were not on.
Okay, okay.
So, again, maybe it doesn't play any role in what happened to Shane. I just think it's a very odd detail that he said, I didn't see any driver and the windshield wipers were on. But the windshield wipers being on seems impossible if Shane was already gone and the keys were gone.
Well, how close to the car did he get?
He parked next to it, is what he said, and then called it in.
So parking next to it, you should be able to see. I mean, the windshield wipers being on, that's like a weird thing to hallucinate. They either are or they aren't. That's not hard to miss. I can see missing a driver. Say the accident had just happened and then he came around the corner. So Shane's still in the car. Depending on the angles, maybe he didn't see Shane. Was it raining that night?
No.
But in the craziness of the crash, in the middle of all the chaos, I can see you accidentally bumping the windshield wiper knob or turning them on when you're reaching for something else. Or I don't know. I wonder if Shane was still in the car when he saw it and he just didn't see Shane. I just feel like the windshield wipers being on is like a weird thing to remember seeing if it wasn't true.
I agree, but I think you have to believe Shane was there with the keys if you believe that the windshield wipers were on.
Which I don't think that's impossible. If he just called it in and then left, now if he waited for the police to come.
He did not, because again, he didn't see a driver.
Right.
He just reported an overturned car.
Yeah.
The only other detail he was able to add is while he was next to Shane's car, a PT cruiser approached the scene and asked if the driver needed assistance. Like he asked the security guard if the driver needed assistance. And the security guard said no, that he had already called police. So there was nothing more to be done. So the PT cruiser left.
Okay. I'm going to lean towards Shane was still there.
Okay. Now, the police continued onward, and incredibly, they were able to find a business along River Road that had recorded a very grainy surveillance footage of traffic that night. From there, authorities were able to identify and contact a couple based on their license plate who drove past Shane's wreck right before authorities arrived. The couple was brought in for questioning and confirmed that they had stopped and spoken to Shane that night and offered to call 911, but Shane refused, telling them his brother was on the way.
And this was right before authorities got there?
Here's the deal. We know it was before authorities got there, but we're not sure of the timeline of was this before or after the security guard. We do know they said they talked to Shane, though. Now, according to this couple, after Shane said, nope, I'm fine, my brother's on the way, the couple thought that was satisfactory and they just moved on. They just left Shane.
Well, I think if authorities really wanted the answer to some of my questions, they could have gotten them. Because they have surveillance footage that should have a timestamp. Even if the timestamp is completely wrong, they should be able to do the math to figure out what time this couple drove by. There also is going to be a record of the security guard calling 911. So they should be able to figure out this timeline if they want to. And I would like to know the answers. So please get on it. because if he was there up until 3 minutes before the police came, then one, I'm right. He was there when the security guard called.
Yeah, the only timeline that we know is that it took Brett about 20 minutes from learning of the accident to get to the scene, which is already a pretty quick timeline.
It is.
Then we know that there was 10 minutes between the 911 call coming in and authorities getting there. 10 minutes. Either way, we're talking about 10 minutes or 20 minutes. That is still incredibly quick. And it's not to say, like you said, you're on the side of the road, you could be vulnerable to a bad guy or accidentally getting hit or whatever it is, but that's so quick.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it is quick. It is quick. That's about how long I was on the side of the road. When I was on the side of the road, it was probably about 20 minutes. And it is quick. At the same time, I definitely had cars going by me and stuff like that. So it is possible something bad can happen in that time. And again, that's something bad involving another person. There's still the idea that he was confused and went into the water. Maybe if it's dark, he didn't even know he was headed towards the water. Maybe he couldn't see.
Maybe. I do think it's interesting this couple talked to him and again, didn't think anything was wrong. They didn't report him looking injured. They reported him being coherent. He said, nope, thanks for stopping. My brother's on the way. I don't need help.
I guess I don't have a whole lot of experience being around people who've suffered from something like a concussion. Can you tell by the way they're acting, or is it possible to act totally normal and still be experiencing these symptoms? Because my gut would tell me that I would be able to fake looking pretty normal if I wanted to while experiencing symptoms.
I think what I'm trying to communicate with that is, could Shane have spoken to them and sounded fine? Yes. But this couple did not see any visible head wound or head injury.
I don't know that that means a whole lot to me, because
That's fine.
you don't necessarily have to have an abrasion to have hit your head.
I absolutely agree. But it's just another data point.
It is. And it is interesting. It is interesting that there is another person saying, no, he acted fine. He was right there by his car.
Yep. Now, 3 weeks after Shane vanished, his family raised money to have a billboard placed on Interstate 10. They hoped that the billboard, which had a picture of Shane and information about his case, would bring in some fresh tips for investigators. Brett admitted that he was afraid people would forget about his brother. Quote, people might slowly forget, but we're not. We're going to keep reminding them that we are out here. We're not going to stop looking for him, end quote. The Jefferson Parish Sheriff's Office continued to investigate Shane's disappearance, but detectives quickly admitted they had exhausted all leads and still had no idea what had happened to Shane after he wrecked his car. He had literally vanished. Weeks turned into months, and Shane's fate remained a mystery. Although his family did everything they could to keep his name in the public eye, by September 2011, the case was in danger of growing cold. Shane's trail ended at the site of the accident. His cell phone hadn't been used since he spoke to his brother, and his bank accounts and credit cards remained untouched.
Was his cell phone at the scene?
Nope, never found.
And they can't track it, I'm assuming.
Nope. We'll get into the cell phone a little bit more as well, but no, because of the type of cell phone it was not able to be tracked.
Okay.
I will tell you, the car keys, his cell phone, and his wallet have never been found.
Never been found. And then, of course, he's never been found.
Correct.
The only thing that has ever been found of his person was his shoe.
Right.
I don't know. That's too weird. It's too weird. How many miles of like nothing but these buildings were there? I don't know. I'm envisioning these ditches and stuff going on for miles. So there is a lot of like places he could have just like walked that's just out in the middle of nowhere, not around people.
Not really. I think if you believe he wandered off, I think he either followed the road, which seems unlikely to me because I think somebody would have seen him walking along the road, which no one ever has, or he would have gone into the river. Because the other side of the road had a lot of chain link fences or some kind of other fencing to block off these industrial lots.
Okay. So really nowhere for him to go other than be picked up or into the river.
But again, within an hour of him disappearing, they had the infrared cameras out and never found anything. So that doesn't rule out the fact that maybe he was picked up.
Right. And would those cameras work in the river?
I don't know the answer to that. Later in this case, the river was swept and they have not found his body.
The whole thing? I mean, the Mississippi River, that's pretty big.
Well, not the whole thing. I'm not exactly sure what stretch, but according to his family and authorities, it was a very thorough search. So that's my only takeaway from that, is that everyone felt like if he was going to be found, it would have been within this area that they searched.
Okay. I feel like that's very much needle in a haystack, I guess is what my point is. You can search the area you think he is, but Mississippi River, there's a current, there are predators, there are alligators, it's big. So I feel like there is a possibility a person could go into that river and literally never be found.
It's a possibility. It absolutely is. Shane's family continued to distribute missing persons flyers throughout the area, and they received several tips from people who believed they had seen Shane. The witnesses said he appeared to be homeless and possibly had a head injury. This man was last seen near the West Bank Expressway over the Labor Day weekend, but the family's attempts to find this man were in vain. This man has never been found.
But that's interesting. That would give us an explanation.
It could, but just because this man wasn't found, it still filled the family with hope that Shane was alive and just didn't know his identity. So they announced they were offering a $10,000 reward for information leading to Shane's recovery. Friends of Shane's fundraised to hire a private eye from Texas EquiSearch to conduct another search of the area where Shane had last been seen. Tim Miller, the founder of Texas EquiSearch, said the case was one of the most perplexing ones he had ever seen. He didn't believe that Shane had fallen into the Mississippi River and was hoping that another search of the area might provide clues as to what happened to the missing man. Unfortunately, these efforts were stalled when the PI became too rough with a local homeless man when demanding answers about a sighting of Shane. Police actually had to step in and tell the PI to leave the man alone. Like, he was kind of like shaking his arm, like, tell me what you know. So all that to say, I think it's clear everyone felt a real sense of frustration with the lack of information about Shane's whereabouts.
Sure.
Months went by, and it was clear the case had stalled. As the first anniversary of Shane's disappearance approached, his family knew little more than they had on the night he went missing. Brett admitted, quote, "We still have no pertinent information about Shane's whereabouts. We constantly think about him every day and we love him. I'm hoping that he's out there, but I'm thinking that something bad could have happened, and it happened pretty quick. Maybe he was trying to walk away and he made his way into the street and somebody might have hit him or something," end quote. At the time of his disappearance, Shane was still carrying a Georgia driver's license as he had just moved back to Louisiana and he hadn't changed his address with the DMV. So some of his friends pointed out that he may have hitchhiked out of the area and eventually made his way back to Georgia. Like, if he had sustained a head injury, it was possible he was suffering memory loss and thought he still lived in Savannah. But searches there have failed to yield any evidence of Shane. In Terry Fell's interview on the podcast Unfound, she recounted a conversation she and her husband had with detectives at the police department just weeks after Shane's disappearance. She said the captain reported, quote, "If you are the sort of people that believe in UFOs, then I could tell you that Shane was abducted by a UFO. That's how much information is in the area. Nothing. It's like he was sucked up from the earth into space," end quote. Which is a pretty strong statement, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I'm just thinking, gosh, as his mother, how helpless. I mean,
Yep.
I think in these missing persons cases, you always feel helpless, but like to not even have a clue. And at the same time, I think there's really only a few options. He's either went in the river, somebody picked him up, or he wandered off. I feel like those are our only three viable options. So they don't have surveillance footage of the vehicle. They have it of the road.
Correct. They don't have the actual accident scene. They have the road, so they know people were traveling. And I've never even seen it reported that the security officer was on the road because he turned back around. It's a data point, but it's not a clear picture of everything that happened that evening. It's not the full picture.
Right. Part of me is like, okay, well, if you have the road, then you would at least be able to say, okay, 10 cars passed by him that night. But we really can't say for sure because somebody could have picked him up and turned around and never been caught on the camera.
Right.
But if I were authorities, I'd probably really do a lot of research into however many cars did pass by. I'd be tracking those cars down. Then you can rule out with pretty good certainty. Again, it's not 100%, but it would be helpful to be like, we talked to every one of the cars that we saw that traveled on the road that night. None of them picked him up. None of them took him. You know, it's just another way of kind of narrowing down what could have happened.
Right. Another detective on Shane's case went on to say that when something like this happens, people on the street talk. Like if somebody were to have picked up Shane, but no one has ever said anything. And that continues to be the case for some 14 years. No one has said anything about someone picking up Shane or harming Shane, anything. Sadly, at this point in 2025, investigators do not appear to be actively searching for Shane. He remains listed as a missing person, but his case has been cold for more than a decade. Now, over the years, Shane's family has continued to search for him. His mother, Terry, is convinced her son is still alive, but doesn't remember who he is. There have been several reported sightings of Shane in various homeless encampments, but to date, none of them have been confirmed. There are some, including a few in Shane's family, that believe, as I think you do, that Shane may have fallen in the river and was unable to get out. And investigators initially agreed with this theory. This led to a thorough search of the river bottom using sonar and dragging of the river bottom. While Shane's body was never found, the search was so thorough that investigators found another body instead.
Okay.
They don't believe this body was related at all to Shane's case, but that gives you an idea of if his body was in that area, they more than likely would have found it.
I would be curious to know the body that they did find, how long had that person been missing? That would tell me a lot. If it was, they'd just gone missing 2 weeks previously, that would say one thing. If they'd gone missing 2 years previously, that would tell me another. It would mean that a body can stay hidden in the river for quite some time.
The only thing I know is that this body was identified to have tattoos.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how they initially knew it was not Shane's body, because Shane
Right.
did not have tattoos.
Right.
So the body was intact enough to have tattoos.
Okay. So probably not there for 2 years.
Right. Not skeletal by
Right.
any means, still had
Right.
flesh.
Right. Okay.
How many bodies are in the Mississippi River?
Oh, that's another one of my irrational fears is like any body of water, like an ocean or a lake or a river, anything like that, that I'm going to just be in and find a body.
Yeah, that would be scary.
Yeah.
That would be scary.
So this case didn't help that.
Don't go in the Mississippi River, which I don't know that many people are swimming in that muddy Mississippi these days, but yeah, just cross it off.
Yeah.
List.
I don't know. To me, the river still feels like a more viable option than him getting picked up or walking away, because I don't understand how he could have walked away and no one's seen him either. He couldn't have gotten far. I don't feel like he could have gotten that far. So with his brother driving, his brother's kind of on the lookout for him that night.
Right.
But we know there was activity at the scene there soon, within 20 minutes of the accident, which means he couldn't have gotten far on foot.
At a maximum, 20 minutes at a maximum.
Right. Which means he really couldn't have gotten far on foot. So I'm struggling with the idea that he just walked away, didn't remember who he was. People are out looking for him in the days after. Maybe not the police because they think he's being hidden, but his family is. This would have probably made the news, and people are going to maybe be a little more aware when they see somebody walking by who matches this guy's description. I don't know. That just seems hard to believe. At the same time, it gives me hope to know that we've had all of these sightings that could potentially be him. I hope it is.
Sure. Now, Shane's mother, Terry, who again believes that he's out there and doesn't know who he is, said she doesn't believe the theory that Shane went into the river because of the way his cell phone operated. And remember, his wallet, keys, and phone have never been found.
Mm-hmm.
Terry said for at least a day, they were able to call Shane's phone and it would ring before going to voicemail. Now, on the second day, it would just go straight to voicemail. Shane's phone was one of the old Nokia flip phones, like a track phone, where you go and pay for minutes. So that's why it couldn't be pinged. It doesn't ping the same off a tower. They're not able to get a location. But Terry believes the fact that the phone was still ringing meant that the phone, and therefore her son, never went into the water.
That makes sense.
And I don't know. There appears to be some uncertainty about whether the phone would ring or not if the mechanics weren't working. But based on the fact that this is kind of a throwaway phone, if you will, I don't believe it would have worked if it was in the water.
Although sometimes I think those old school flip phones were like, it's like
indestructible.
It's like the appliances of yesteryear. I had a washer and dryer from the 50s when I bought my house that were still going. Whereas I buy a brand new one and I'm replacing the elements within 2 years. So I'm like, if there is any phone that would have worked while completely submerged, it would have been a flip phone. But I guess if we don't have an expert who can say either way, then we really can't say either way.
I think the fact that it rang for a day, but then stopped ringing and went straight to voicemail, I think the fact that it changed is an indication that, yeah, I think it was operating
Something
for at least
changed.
a day.
It died
Yeah.
or something like that.
Yeah, I think so.
Or did those, when they ran out of minutes, did they stop ringing? I don't know how those worked. Like the
Yeah,
prepaid.
I'm not sure. No one has been able to say for sure, but for Terry, this is the thing that keeps her thinking that he's out there.
I do think that's a very valid point. Unless he went in later, but then where was he in the meantime?
Right. Now, I'm just going to briefly touch on this because if you do any research on this case, it does come up. But there have been some that have accused the police of wrongdoing because of the way they handled the case in the beginning. I don't really think this is the case, especially because that timeline is so tight. Like, what would they have done with Shane and for what purpose? Like, that doesn't make any sense for me. No, what would be the motive? But I think this is a case where you have so few theories, you kind of grasp at straws. So that's my opinion on why this one's even prevalent. But I don't get the feeling that I can't say they handled this correctly, but I don't think they did anything to Shane.
Well, and I think maybe that's why I keep harping on he's in the river, because none of it really makes sense, but we know something happened. So what's the most logical answer here? So I can see why people just grasping at straws. Well, if this didn't happen and this didn't happen, and this didn't happen, maybe the police screwed it up.
Yep.
But it is weird. I'll tell you, this one just feels like this one's all about timing. Whatever happened to him, whether he walked away and wasn't seen, whether he succumbed to the elements, got in the river, somebody picked him up. The fact that it happened in just the very few moments where it could have happened without anybody seeing it, there being no evidence left behind, that's just kind of wild.
I agree.
Something happened.
Yes, very much.
Something happened. Yeah.
And quickly. Like, even if he had fallen in the river, we're talking a period of 10 minutes and nobody saw him or heard him, or it's just bizarre.
Right. Well, and if the way you've described it, it sounds like it would have taken him a minute to get to the river.
It would. It's not like he just fell over the side into the river.
Right.
It's a walk to get to the river.
Right. Now, I will say it doesn't sound like when authorities got to the scene, they too traveled to the river to like look around.
That's true.
So
That's true.
If he had done that, I don't know that they would have found him that night. But yeah, I don't know. Weird.
Yeah, weird. Now, Terry has gone on to say that Shane was, quote, an absolutely wonderful human being, very, very much loved and full of love himself. I would just so appreciate any sort of help that we could get because I just can't believe that he's not coming home. I'll always look for him every day so long as there's breath in my body. He needs to come home. He needs to be home with us, end quote. So that's kind of where we are. Terry said she still buys a Christmas ornament for Shane every year. And this part, my gosh, I hope I can get through this without tearing up. But she said every year Brett writes her a beautiful card. And apparently he's very, very eloquent with his language as well. And he always writes her a beautiful card. And he sends it from both he and Shane. So Terry said these are the little ways that they keep Shane still with them.
I really just want to be friends with this family. They sound like just the most amazing people.
Yeah.
Just, I'll say one thing. Terry raised those boys right.
Yeah.
You know?
And she even made a point after the accident. Even the officers had commended her for raising these men into adulthood who had never been in trouble with the law, never had any DUIs, never had been in any fights, never had any run-ins. They were just good people.
Texting each other when they got home. They didn't have any of this toxic masculinity. Like just,
Right. And even the fact that Brett's wife, Amber, she has spoken so highly of Shane. Like they got along and connected. What a loss.
Oh,
what a loss.
Awful. It's awful.
Yeah. So you see how the story does have, again, kind of like the Brandon Swanson and the Maura Murray. Where are they? They were literally on the phone with people or had just seen by people and then just disappeared.
I think the big difference in this case, though, and I think I still lean this way, that he obviously was suffering from some kind of a head injury that impacted his choices, regardless of that, whether that was to walk away or get in the river or go with a stranger. But in those cases, the victims had been acting a little strangely. Here we have a situation where, by all accounts, he was acting totally typical
Yep.
of himself. So I think that's the thing that keeps throwing a wrench in all of my theories, but why would you do this? It's almost
Yeah.
like, honestly, it's almost like a serial killer just was driving by and saw him and was like, oh, look, here's a easy target, and just like picked him up and kept on driving. That makes as much sense as anything else.
Maybe, but based on that couple that encountered Shane, he was like, nope, I don't need a ride. My brother's coming. You know what I mean? Like the fact that he said, no, I don't need any help makes me think he wouldn't just voluntarily get into another vehicle. You know what I'm saying? Like if he was going to accept a ride from anybody, it wouldn't have been that couple, but he didn't. He said, no, my brother's on the way. So unless somebody like hit him and tried to hide his body or literally like forcefully abducted him, I don't know how he would have gotten into a vehicle or
No,
would have chosen to get in a vehicle. Does that make sense?
you're right. And I don't see why, if someone had hit him, they would have tried to take him.
How could they have done it so quickly?
Right. I don't know. That always kind of, that whole I know what you did last summer thing where, you hit somebody and try to hide the body. That always seems like so not realistic to me. Although we have heard it as like real theories in these cases. So that seems strange to me, but I don't know.
The one in this one is just the timeline. The timeline is so tight.
Yeah. Which, and again, I know I've like beat it to death. I think that's why the only thing that seems plausible to me is the river. It's the only thing he could have gotten to quickly that wasn't searched that evening, to our knowledge. He could have gotten lost fast, like really fast. That goes, especially with a head injury or any type of drinks, a flowing river with alligators. I mean, that can get really bad really fast in the dark.
Yes, so. But how crazy that he had spoken to everybody so intelligibly and then just wandered off. Like what happened? In 10 minutes, his brain injury went from, okay, we're able to hold it together to I'm just going to wander off and fall in the river. That seems crazy to me too. I mean, I agree with you. I think it's the most plausible explanation, but even that doesn't seem normal. I don't know that normal is the right word, but you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I do. I wrestle with that too. I guess I just don't know enough about these types of brain injuries to know, can you go in and out? Are you able to say, no, I'm okay, my brother's on his way, while still being in a very confused state? I don't understand enough about them to know, how that works. But he either got in a car with somebody, willingly or not, walked away, or got in the river. And all three of those things points to him not being in his right state of mind, right? Walking away.
Or you forgot the sucked up in a UFO.
Well, honestly, at this point, I mean, I think it's as possible as anything else.
Yeah. I mean, I'm with you. I told you it was bizarre.
And as bizarre as it is, it's just so tragic. I mean, just awful. I feel so terrible for Terry and Brett and their family. And he had just come back. They were just all reunited. I guess the silver lining, not that I can speak to this, but the silver lining would be that they did go those 9 months together to, have the family nights and support each other and spend that time together. But just what an awful scenario.
It sounds like their family is still not whole and probably will never be.
Oh, sure. Will never be. Well, here's what I'm going to hope. I'm going to hope that the sightings are really him, because I do think that's possible. The fact that people keep seeing somebody who looks like him, not working as a CEO at a big bank in downtown New York City, but in a homeless shelter where someone might end up if they were suffering from, some brain trauma. I think, I don't know, maybe it is. Let's get on those leads and let's find him. If he's out there to be found, let's find him.
Okay, Cynthia, I think we're going to move on to our branch of hope for the month of May 2025.
Let's do it.
This month, we are sponsoring the JED Foundation, which is a nonprofit organization that protects emotional health and prevents suicide for teens and young adults in the United States. JED empowers teens and young adults by building resiliency and life skills, promoting social connectedness, and encouraging help-seeking and help-giving behaviors through their nationally recognized programs, digital channels, and partnerships, as well as through media. JED works in schools, particularly high schools, colleges, and universities, to put systems, programs, and policies in place to create a culture of caring that protects students' mental health, builds life skills, and makes it more likely that struggling students will seek help and be recognized, connected to care, and supported. So we are so pleased that our branch of hope is sponsoring the JED Foundation this month. If you are a Patreon member, know that a portion of your monthly subscription is going directly to JED. If you would like more information about JED, you can head to our Instagram account, The Dark Oak Podcast, our website, thedarkoak.com, or you can reach out to us. We would love to connect you to the JED Foundation if you are someone who would like to donate. If you are someone who would like to donate your time, they would also be very receptive to that. If you are someone who has struggled with suicidal tendencies in your past, but you have overcome them, I know you can be a help to others struggling, maybe some young people who haven't made it to the other side like you have. You have the ability to help other people, and this may be your nudge. This may be it. So if we can help you get connected, we would love to do so.
Yes, and May is Mental Health Awareness Month. So our sponsorship of the JED Foundation comes at the perfect timing. And don't forget, if you join our Patreon at that $10 tier, or if you upgrade to that $10 tier, you're automatically going to be in. A portion of your proceeds will go directly to JED. So it's a win-win.
That's right. And you get a cameo video from Cynthia and I. Fun.
So fun. So fun. We're really excited to make them. So we need a bunch of people to join because we want to send y'all some cameos.
Exactly. Okay, Shiver Seekers, thank you so much for joining us today and participating in our 100th episode celebration. Yeah, be sure to come back next week where I'm covering the very, very bizarre unsolved murder of Penny Bell. This is one of Britain's most notorious unsolved murders. So I really want to get some eyes and ears on this case. Lauren Bell, in particular, Penny's daughter, has really put out feelers for help because we just passed the 30th anniversary of the murder and she needs some help. So we want to be part of the solution. So make sure you come back to listen to Penny's story.
We'll catch you then. Have a great week.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.
This episode of The Dark Oak was created, researched, written, recorded, hosted, edited, published, and marketed by Cynthia and Stephanie of Just Us Gals Productions, and made possible by you, our shiver-seeking listener. Special thanks goes to Justice Himes for our incredible artwork and Ryan Crete for our amazing music.